We're 10 games in, and the Indiana Pacers are 500. Surprising many, but they're playing good recently, and there's lots to dive into with this team. Let's do 10 observations through 10 games for the Indiana Pacers on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI. And today, fun show coming. Pacers 10 games in to their season, which is, I think, the last normal rounded number where you can do X number of observations through that many games. If I did it at 25 observations through 25 games, that would be a 2-hour podcast. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to do 10 Pacers observations through 10 games, except you're only going to get 5 from me, because joining me, bringing his own 5 observations through 10 Pacers games, Eddie Garrison, the producer for Kevin's Corner over at 1070, the fan, the producer for the Pacers Radio Network, and a pre- and post-game producer for the Colts as well. Indy's finest radio man, Eddie Garrison, is here. Eddie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. First of all, thanks for having me on. Can say that this is my first appearance on Locked On Pacers and my first appearance on, I think, any podcast since I've taken over as the producer of the Pacers Radio Network. Yeah.
That is heartbreaking. This should have happened much sooner. Well, I figured what a week to do this with you, because the Pacers are like the 6th most interesting story in indie sports media this week. So I made the joke yesterday. I'm the only indie sports podcast not talking about Jeff Saturday. Now 2 days running, we will not be talking about Jeff Saturday. 10 observations about this fun Pacers team through 10 games. We're going to bounce around and do a couple minutes on a bunch of stuff, because this team has been really surprising and interesting, right? I at this point had him at only 4 wins when I did my before the season run through the schedule, and even that was kind of giving them, some wins over tough opponents, but they've been great. So, Eddie, you can go first. Give me your first big observation about this Pacers team through their first 10 games.
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to obviously hit the guy that's been, heavily talked about, Tyrese Halliburton. I think he has played above expectation. I think so far through the first 10 games, we expected 20 and 10, but for him to actually come out and perform at that level, I think says a lot about the work he put in this offseason. I think he just has a better understanding, and I think Rick Carlisle himself has a better understanding on how this offense is going to operate now. With Tyrese Halliburton, he's averaging about a dozen points in the second half, and I really like that, because as a point guard, your job is to get those other guys involved, and the best way to do that is get them involved early. You get some confidence instilled with them. You're seeing an increased role in shooting and scoring from guys like Buddy Hield. Miles Turner's been great since he's returned in his 5 games of action so far. And then, of course, Benedict Mathurin also getting involved whenever he's called upon to play next to Tyrese. But I love the way he's been organizing, the way he's taken responsibility. And I think he has been able to pick the battles of when he needs to go up tempo versus when he needs to slow it down. Compared to last year, he just wanted to run. He just wanted to go up, get the ball, run up the court. And now it's a lot slower. There are times where they run offensive sets. I still see some instances, though, where the ball does stick a little bit when they get in those offensive sets, because there's just a little bit of confusion and lack of communication. But you expect that time to time from a young team. So my first observation through first 10 games is that Tyrese Halliburton is him.
Is him. That's right. The new lingo. I love it. The thing that's been fascinating about his start to me is, we all knew he had the keys, but last year he plays with Brogdon at times, a couple other guards in the mix. He didn't have to be the offensive leader or the setup man all the time. So you always wonder, how's this guy going to respond? I thought his passing numbers would still look good, because they were awesome for the Pacers last year, even with the context of the guys he was playing with. It's just, can he balance that with being you're the alpha, you're the leader, you have the ball all the time? And that was one of my 10s. So we'll just blend these together, is that he's been able to not only, be that offensive initiator, set the right pace for whatever set they're running, even in recent games, against the Heat, he's drawn double and triple teams, but he can see the, where the openings are, who's the guy that needs to be the decision maker instead of him, and get the ball out to that guy. When Depot was ascending for the Pacers, that's something he struggled with. When he would draw the double, he couldn't react as quickly as Tyrese has. So he has taken on that more attention and kind of leadership role head on, to the point that he's been able to find the other guy who is now a threat, while also himself being like, okay, if they're going to defend me this way, I don't need to be a setup pass man on this possession. I can score myself. I've got this new
Mhm.
scooping 6 foot hook shot thing. I don't, what do I call that? What would you call
I
that
don't
shot?
know either. Call it a baby hook? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like a mixture of a lot of shots that have names, but it
Yeah.
itself does not yet. I might ask him what he would call it, but that is a new thing that defenders have to think about too. So he's just been able to set the tempo, keep the pace alive for this Pacers offense in a way that they really haven't had in prior seasons, where Brogdon and Sabonis would get into a 2-man game, or Levert would do whatever he could to create,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily his strength to create for others. He is so Halliburton, I mean, is so naturally good at it
Mhm.
already that it's been very impressive what it's done for this team.
Yeah, another thing I want to touch on is like the energy and the excitement he brings on a nightly level at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And you can see all the teammates, they love Halliburton and they love playing with him. And you can see these guys playing with a smile on their face. And I think this has been one of the more enjoyable teams. It is only through 10 games, so we still have a long ways to go in the season. But I think this has been one of the more enjoyable teams in quite a while, for Pacers fans to go out and watch. And even if they lose so far, they have been entertaining in those losses. I think there's only been one game really where the game got out of hand and they lost, and it's like blanking my mind right now. But the Chicago game maybe is the only one I'm thinking of. But other than that, Tyrese has been exceptional. And he's had just one bad game so far through those first 10, and that was that Brooklyn game where he had 7 turnovers, I think. So I think Tyrese has been everything as expected and everything that you said as well.
They did a great job getting him in the trade, and to the point of them being, so fun to watch. Like a guy you can really rely on to tell you, who's watched
Mhm.
the Pacers for decades and decades. Mark Boyle even tweeted that. Like, this team
Yeah.
has been so enjoyable to watch, and for a guy that's seen so many eras of Pacers basketball, I think that has a lot more meaning. And Tyrese has been a big part of that. Let's pivot to my first one, a different young guy who we knew he had this skill set, but now that he's fully integrated in the rotation every day and adding an element the Pacers have had zero times in my lifetime, Isaiah Jackson, the vertical spacer. We've known this stuff for a while, that his athleticism is what makes him so good. But this year, now that they found a good pairing for him with TJ McConnell, where McConnell is just, as soon as he gets around a screen, if he sees Isaiah Jackson as a half step, he throws the ball 100 feet in the air and the Pacers get 2 points.
Yeah.
On defense, like guys, like breakaway layups aren't a thing anymore because Isaiah Jackson's chasing you. Like, you have to think about him coming. Like, the way
Mhm.
he's able to cover ground and jump is so rare for a guy who's 6'10, 6'11. And so he has added a new element on both ends of the floor, because he can switch, because he can finish these lobs that the Pacers have not had in forever. And Carlisle talked about, they're not going to be last in dunks anymore. They want to add athleticism. He is kind of the embodiment of what I feel like he meant by that. On the offensive end, it's just an element they have never been able to do: throw the ball above the rim to get points.
And I think that's kind of like the new big you look at like Brooklyn with Nick Claxton. I mean, the centers aren't your typical big centers, and I think that's why Joel Embiid is able to dominate as much as he is. Because I mean, there's nobody that's even comparable to his size besides maybe Jokic. But I like Isaiah Jackson. I'm interested to see his role as it progresses throughout the season. If Miles Turner is traded, if he's not traded, because right now he's getting about 20 minutes a game with Miles, and then that bumps up to 30, 32 when Miles is out of the game. And I think the part that we have underestimated with Isaiah Jackson is he's improved defensively to where he can block shots or alter shots without fouling, because that was his biggest issue last year as a rookie, was that every time he seemed to contest a shot, it resulted in a foul. But I think he's played a lot better. I think he's moving his feet a lot better too defensively when he gets inside in the paint, when he's defending somebody in the post. But I think Isaiah Jackson, it brings a different element too, because it allows you sometimes you can go smaller. If you wanted to play O'Shea Brissett or Terry Taylor in there at the 4, you can move Isaiah Jackson at the 5, and you can speed it up if you have the ability to dictate the tempo. So I like the different things that Isaiah Jackson brings, not offensively but defensively as well.
Yeah, growing up in basketball, here's what I bet was the case for Isaiah Jackson. He's in high school, even at Kentucky, right? Defenders who aren't composed and haven't played basketball for a while go, oh crap, here comes Isaiah Jackson. I got to shoot this shot as fast as I can so he doesn't
Yeah.
block me. And so his whole life, because he's been so athletic, he just jumps to try to block those
Mhm.
shots. And so in the NBA, with the best in the world, they're so calm and composed. last year especially, one shot fake and you were right by Isaiah Jackson because he go flying past you. So
Yeah.
this year, and he even talked about this last year being a huge point of emphasis for him, is like stay down, close out, shuffle the feet. He still has jumpy problems. I think those instincts
Mhm.
can get at times, especially kind of within 6'5" but in general, yeah, he can switch more. He can defend those guys in a stance, get low, make it happen in a way that's been really impressive as an added element on both ends of the floor. Hey guys, one short little break here so I can talk to you about LinkedIn jobs. These days, every potential new hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You just go on there, click a few buttons, post your job. You add the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word that you're hiring. They have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy for you to focus on candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality candidates and hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. You're up, Eddie Garrison. Thing number 3, since we kind of doubled up on Halliburton,
Yeah.
of your observations for the Pacers this season.
Oh, by the way, to go back to one, the name for the Halliburton hook shot, we'll call it the Hallie hook.
The Hallie hook? Okay, I like
Yeah,
that.
there we go.
I'll run it
I
by him.
like, yeah, yeah. I like so number 2 for me and number 3 overall, Benedict Mathurin. Yeah, you look at what he's done and really impressive considering a rookie. But you look at the way he's scoring. I believe the percentage was around 70% of his shots have been either layups or 3-pointers, which I mean is fits into right what you want to do in today's NBA. And he's still averaging 20 points a game doing that, and he's incredibly efficient. And when he's getting inside and he's attacking the basket, he's finishing through contact or drawing contact and getting to the foul line. Those are characteristics that you normally don't see out of rookies, especially in the first month of the season, let alone the first 10 games of the season. The one part for me that I'm going to see him develop that can take him to the next level as a scorer. Oftentimes you hear about the 3-level scoring. Well, right now I kind of view him as a 2-level scorer. Inside toward the basket and 3-point line is the mid-range jump shot. When you look at Bradley Beal, that's kind of like a similar skill set, kind of offensively scoring wise. I think down the line for Benedict Mathurin, I know that was somebody that people were comparing him to in the draft process. Now it's obviously really high regards to compare him to somebody of Bradley Beal's stature, but now that you kind of see him and the way he's playing, you can kind of see those comparisons. The Miami game, the possession where he has the ball like the top of the key, just inside the 3-point line. He just kind of stands there. He's looking, and then lets Hero go by, takes a step back, shoots a 3. I thought that was great. I think he's had terrific poise when he's on the floor. And everyone's asking, like, when's he going to start? When's he going to start? It's like, to me, it doesn't really matter who starts the game. It's who's on the court at the end of the game. And he's been on the floor at the end of the game for, I think, all 9 games. There may be like 1 or 2 in there where he hasn't been, but he's still getting 30 minutes a game. He's getting starting level minutes a game. So I think just with Benedict Mathurin, I love what the coaching staff has done in keeping him in his role to allow him to feel comfortable and to continue to progress so far through his rookie year.
Yeah, the 2-level score is a really good way to put it. And I can't believe we're referencing Karis LeVert twice in the same podcast. Here we go. But something that helped Karis really develop is adding like a floater or like
Yeah.
something to score like more than 5 feet from the rim so that once everybody realized he was going to try to go to the rim every time, he could shoot over them and add another shot. Now, the thing with Mathurin is when he goes to the rim, he's around a foul every time. So right now, maybe he doesn't need it. As defenders get better at figuring out what his strengths and weaknesses are, he will need it. But yeah, I like the 2-level scorer way of putting it because I think the funniest story about him so far is Halliburton was joking. Like, I think I've said this on the show before, but they were doing their practices before the season with like a local ref they bring in and hire. And Mathurin's complaining and wanting fouls in these scrimmages, and Tyrese is like, "You're a rookie. You're not getting these calls when the NBA season starts." And then he was like, "Well, actually, he is getting these calls because he's so good at getting to those spots and drawing the fouls. The 3 obviously has been falling. Like 61% true shooting for a rookie on any sort of shot diet is extremely impressive. But he's doing it on tough shots at the rim, 3-point shooting, and a lot of that being self-created 3-point shooting. Like the way he's able to score is It's just ridiculous for a rookie. And his free throw rate, the big thing that we just kind of talked about that adds to that at the rim, right? Big men are going to get fouled a lot, right? Though
Mhm.
the three bigs for the Pacers who play a lot, Goga, Turner, and Jackson, who play around the rim a lot, I should say. Jalen Smith does not as much. All have a free throw rate over 50%. But then after Isaiah Jackson, you drop down to Tyrese Halliburton, who's fifth on the team at 27%. Mathurin's at 44, right? So he is like 17% more often compared to his shot attempts getting to the line than the next
Mhm.
best guy on the Pacers, who's not a big. Like that is crazy good numbers at the rate
Yeah.
he gets to the line. He had one off night. It was Chicago actually, where he went like 2 for 11 and still
And
had
then
19 points because he made a bunch of free throws. I forget which game it was.
and
I
then
think it was.
Monday night, he had the off night too. He was like,
Yeah,
what,
but
2 for 8, but he had 5 assists. And I was like, oh, that was the first time I think we really seen him as a distributor,
right.
getting other people involved. I think that's another part of his game that needs to develop.
Well, I thought that was fascinating too because he was in that closing lineup, and I thought this is interesting because he's kind of been off, but he
Mhm.
looked for Tyrese. He threw it into Turner a few times. He found Buddy in the corner for that three late. Like he realized like, okay, I'll just pass instead.
Yeah.
Like that was a new kind of thing for him too, like to adjust to an off night, and that sort of plays into what my note about him was for this observations is this. Let's call back to preseason for this. They played the Knicks the first time in New York. He was all right. I think he had 15 points, and then they play the Knicks at home and he had 27 and looked ridiculously good and was getting to the
Mhm.
rim and like showing the stuff that everyone was like, oh, this guy might be really good. And he said that something he noticed was like the way they were defending him when he would come off a screen without the ball. They were like a step down, right? And that
Mhm.
he realized that he needed to adjust, and he did, and he scored a bunch of points. And so ever since then, I started to watch the way he kind of moves off the ball when he's coming around the screen, and he's so good at like setting up his man in the perfect way to already have an
Mhm.
advantage on the catch, right? So that he doesn't have to necessarily be as crafty to beat the guy to the rim or to get to the basket. And so, yeah, he's obviously been amazing finishing there and drawing contact, but that in particular, like catching the ball already with an advantage, is really impressive, and that's been something that I've been really impressed with him at is, his general off-ball movement when there's not a screen for him, a little floaty at times, but that
Mhm.
specifically has been really impressive to me in a way that allows him to create advantages even when he doesn't have the ball, and that's rare for rookies.
Yeah, on the defensive side, there are times where he gets caught ball watching instead of keeping an eye on his. Excuse my dog if you heard my dog there in the background. But there are times defensively where I feel like he gets caught watching the ball, loses track of his guy, or where they're out on the floor. So I think that's like the biggest area of improvement for him is defensively and making sure he's staying focused on the guy he's guarding if they're in man to man, or they very rarely go zone. So most of the time there. But yeah, I really like the ball movement. And or not the ball movement, but the off ball movement when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's hard to be more impressed with a rookie than him.
Right.
He exceeded all expectations. We've already done three of mine because I had two Matherins and two Halliburtons like you, so you get to go again,
Let's go.
Eddie Garrison.
So I'm not going to go with a player here. I'm going to go with a team. The third thing on my list was the first quarter defense. Obviously, last year that was a very big area in which they were not good at. First 5 games this year, giving up 35.5 points per game in the first quarter. Last 5 games, 29. So they've improved the last 5 games in that first quarter. I don't know what it is that's changed differently, but the first quarter defense for the Pacers, I think, has been a large part of why they've been able to win 4 of their last 5 games because they're not working from behind as far. They've been playing a lot more closer games and then kind of into the same realm here in the fourth quarter. Last year, they would crumble, fall apart, and blow the lead if they had the lead or make it really close if they were behind, but not get over that hump. This year, it seems like a totally opposite. If they're behind, they are able to get back into the game, or if they're ahead, they're able to close out and still hold on to the win. You're getting guys like Tyrese either distributing to make guys better, to get open shots and make shots late. Buddy Hield has been great in the fourth quarter for the majority of the season. Tyrese has been great in the fourth quarter so far. I like what they're doing now in the first quarter defensively and what they're doing on both sides of the floor to close out games in the fourth quarter to pick up some W's here of late.
Yeah, something Rick said earlier this season when I asked about the slower starts is like he said, you start and finish kind of similar. And so you
Mhm.
look at their net rating in fourth quarters this year, plus 6.9. That's eighth in
Mhm.
the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Their first quarter net rating is last in the league, minus 20.9. But you were right to talk about the improvement because I remember I did a segment on their starts when they were 1-4 after they lost to Chicago. Yeah, they had a horrible first quarter in Chicago, and
Mm-hmm.
they were last in the league with a minus like 30 net rating in first quarters. So the fact that they've jumped up 10 points in net rating in their
Yeah.
last 5 games. So yes, they're still last, but they've still taken a huge jump in the
Yeah.
first quarters to start games. Good start against Washington, good start against Miami, good start against New Orleans, right? That has helped them set the tone and be better in these games. And I think it has come on the defensive end where they were giving up mid 30s, high 30s in the first quarter every game. And some of it was the lineup changes, right? Getting Neesmith in helped a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Changing their front court back to what was available in the preseason, getting Miles back obviously helped, but also they've just kind of been more dialed in to start games. And the fact that that has trickled in, like Rick said, like you said, to the fourth quarter has been really huge for this team.
Yeah, 35 plus points given up in 4 of the 5 games to start the year. And in the last 5 games, they've given up 33 or less in all 5 and 30 or less in 4 of the 5. So they've done a terrific job. In that first quarter, I think they've come out more focused. And I think they're not playing as loose. Well, I don't want to say as loose, but they're taking care of the basketball better in that opening quarter. They're playing better defense. So I think all that's kind of like really looped into why they're playing so much better in the first quarter.
Yeah, and to that end, we talked about this with Tyrese already, but he talked about this at Media Day. He said, if we want to be this transition team that's so fast and pushes it down your throat, you have to get a stop to get into
Yes.
transition, right? So defense is like doubly important, especially with Tyrese on the floor, which is to start the games, in letting them play the style that they would like to play. So the fact that they've figured out how to start better, especially in that end, and
Mhm.
giving up 30 in a quarter is still a lot, but it's a big step forward from what they were doing. And that's allowing them to be in these games and win and play the style they want to win. Or they want to play
Mhm.
to win on offense. So that step forward has been really huge for them. And I'm going to springboard off yours into my next one. One more break here, guys, so I can talk to you about betonline.net. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at betonline as well. They always are the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fixed. They've got lines up for this week in football if you're interested in that. No Colts this week, but they do have my beloved Hoosiers line against Ohio State. This is not a typo. IU is the underdogs by 40. Ohio State is a minus 40. All those lines and more, all over at betonline.net. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. A bad thing about their defense, because this is still something that is a little concerning to me long term, especially as they start to play better teams, right? Toronto, who they
Mhm.
play Saturday, is awesome. They got the MVP in town tomorrow. Their schedule's about to heat up in a big way. Not that they've played easy opponents recently, but they're
Mhm.
still allowing the highest 3-point percentage in the NBA, 41% to opponents. That's
Mhm.
going to come down to some extent. That's unreasonably high. But I don't think it's a coincidence that they're giving up a lot of open threes, and a lot of that comes from the trickle down effect of a bad closeout or just
Mhm.
getting beat on the perimeter, which leads to a defensive rotation, which sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. And then there's someone open somewhere else for a three because of the original stop. And that's a long-winded way of saying all that, but they've got to they've been working on this, I know, because a lot of guys have like mentioned it offhand or something, but they've
Mhm.
got to close out a little better because they just blow by guys. We talked about it with Isaiah Jackson, but he's definitely not alone at this. And they aren't they've getting better at it recently, but they've got to get better at just sitting in a stance and standing in front of guys on the perimeter. And I think the starts have been reflective of small improvements in that area, but I still think, again, last in the league in 3-point percentage allowed, they've got ways to go as a team in that part of defense.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think their communication has been a lot better this year in comparison to last year. I think that's a big part of the reason why they struggled so bad defensively, the last 2 months of the season. Other than obvious tanking, to state that, but
That word is not in the lexicon of basketball in the first 10 games of a season.
yeah, that's why I said it last year. So far we're 5-5. No
No
tanking
war
is allowed.
machines, no nothing, none of that.
Yeah, no Wimbenyama. That is not in the vocabulary right now. But yeah, the communication, I think, through the first 2 games has been a lot better. And I think the last 5 games, large part of that is because of Miles being back. That's kind of going into my
Totally.
next point. of what one of my observations is, how much impact he's had, not just on defense, but on offense as well. Like he has put up 30 points twice this season. He's got 2+ blocks, and I think in every game he's got a couple 4-block games. He's actually rebounding. I think he's got 7 or 8 rebounds a game right now. But we really forgot how good Miles Turner was and the impact that he makes, because they missed him so much last year. And you're like, yes, this guy makes an impact. It's going to come down some, but how much is it going to come down in terms of the opposing team's offensive numbers and their success at scoring against the Pacers defense? But when you look at it, I think they've allowed 120 points or less last couple of games, and I think a large part of that is due to Miles Turner returning. And plus, you're seeing the spacing on the floor a little bit better. That pick and rolls it's got a little bit more bite to it, with Halliburton being able to get to the basket and then kick it out. And the kick out lanes are open for shooters like Buddy Hield, Chris Duarte when he's been back, Aaron Nesmith when he's been on the floor. So I think the impact Miles Turner brings so much more than Pacer fans initially thought when they were wondering last year on how this team would look with Tyrese and with Miles together.
Yeah, we were talking about defense a tiny bit at practice earlier today, actually. And, some of the stuff they've kind of changed on that end from last year. And one of Rick's answers was like, well, we have TJ and Miles back. That's been a big part of them not being the worst defense in the league, is having those key vets back. And Miles has been a big part of that. Like, you can look at the on-offs. Opposing teams shoot 2.5% worse on 2-pointers when he's out there. Like, that's pretty significant, because most of those shots, is the way the NBA is now, are at the rim. Like, forcing those shots to be harder is good. The defensive rating's better with him on the floor than off. Like, we've known this stuff forever and ever. But it's even more obvious with a kind of younger defensive team that's rough around the edges when they have a safety blanket. The way they defend is, a little more confident, or, they can funnel guys in a certain way that's a little more productive. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to have warts as a young team, but having Turner back there has really helped them on defense. And obviously on offense, you saw it on Monday when he had 37. And this is something else Rick talked about at practice on Monday. So look at this, or excuse me, today. It's all coming together, but yeah, they've put a little more emphasis on him rolling to the basket. As against the Pelicans, you rarely saw that. They would switch and they'd be like, all right, Miles in the post. Herb Jones is getting his butt put under the rim. Like, that is a new thing for him. And Rick talked about that last year, right? When a lot of the questions to him when he was hired was, hey, Sabonis and Turner, how are you going to make this work? And he said, well, I think I can mix in some roles for Turner and use him as his lob threat. And I don't think the lob threat thing's ever going to happen, but the roles are happening, right? He has not just become exclusively a pop big, so defenses have to react to whatever he's going to do. And when you're playing against Tyrese Halliburton, you can't be reactive, right? You have to be proactive. So there's just a lot of tough hurdles for defenses when he's playing this way, when he's playing confident, which he clearly was the last couple games. So he's had 2 duds, absolutely. The first game he gets a tiny pass because it was his first regular season game since January. But, 3 really solid games, including maybe his best game ever on Monday, and clearly impacting both ends of the floor in a very meaningful way now that he is the lone kind of interior presence.
Yeah, and I think with him coming back, kind of going back to what I talked about with the communication defensively, like, he's seen a lot of basketball, so he understands everything that's going on. He knows most of the players in the league and what they like to do, what they don't like to do, and what teams like to do in general. So I think that part of it too is helping the guards, because he's able to, kind of facilitate. Like, hey, you got this side, you guys need to switch this way or whatever. So I think that's a big reason why we're seeing the leap in the improvement defensively for the Pacers with that communication, is because of Miles Turner's experience.
Yeah, I agree with you on all that, and it's just jarring to see. It's only been 5 games, and one of them was awesome, but Turner at 18.5 points and 8 rebounds per game is just off the charts numbers. His start's been fantastic. One more thing for each of us. I'll go first. We can end on a more positive note because mine is more negative here. The backup 4 spot has kind of been just evaporated from the Pacers rotation because neither of those guys have been working in a way that has been really interesting to me. Instead, they've kind of gone with like more guards, like the guy we're going to talk about at the end, Andrew Nembhard, or Jackson and Turner played together as a front court pairing on Monday for I think the first time of the season, maybe not. But still, Terry Taylor started the season in this mix, and O'Shea has stolen some minutes, as has James Johnson, but none of them have given kind of what was thought. O'Shea Brissett has not made a 2-point shot this season. He's only attempted 2, but that still seems weird. He's 1 for 7 from threes. Like, his shot has not been going at all. And then Terry Taylor's in this weird spot where I think there's clear improvements in his shot from watching him in practice and warming up. But what he's really good at is on the offensive glass. That was obvious in the first couple of games when he's playing. But when he's at the 4, the way the Pacers offense is kind of requires him to be on the perimeter or in the corners. And it's a lot harder to be awesome on the offensive glass in that spot. So he is in kind of a rock and a hard place situation. Either way, though, they haven't gotten as much from those guys who are the right size to kind of defend forwards and be more switchy and versatile. And that sort of made them, and they've been good at being creative, but I think long term, especially going against more competitive teams or teams with more forward sized dudes, not having either of them really in form or with a firm rotation spot could be something that hurts this team.
Yeah, even like O'Shea Brissett back to the preseason, he wasn't really getting much run on the court either.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of his struggles is like he's never really been able to get into game action to get a flow and a rhythm going. So I think eventually he'll get into the game, and when he starts seeing some more consistent minutes, then you'll see that O'Shea Brissett from like last year, portions of last year, and portions of 2020. With the guy with Mega Mind, as I call him, but yeah, I think you'll see that eventually with O'Shea Brissett again, and I think Terry Taylor brings a toughness, and I think you can use him depending on your matchup. The way I kind of look at how the Pacers are operating, with how Jalen Smith is primarily used to stand in the mid-range or outside and shoot threes is like, look at Dallas, for example. It's a very, very similar offensive style, but they want the Pacers, that is, they want to run a little bit more versus where Luka wants to slow things down, penetrate, kick out to the shooters, and they swing the ball around the outside. The Pacers kind of have a similar, look to it. They have Miles sometimes floating in the middle, serving as like the Dwight Powell or JaVale McGee now, or Christian Wood, set the screen, roll the basket, or pop out, shoot the three. So that's just kind of like, and it's ironic that it's Dallas because of where Rick Carlisle came from, but that's just kind of how I look at the Pacers offense right now, and how, like you said, O'Shea and Terry Taylor have not been playing to expectation. But I think a lot of it has to deal with the lack of consistent minutes that the two guys are getting to have that confidence to go in and make meaningful impact night in and night out.
Yeah, like on the road trip in Washington, both of those guys played, and James Johnson played. Or no, then Washington, none of them played. And then in Brooklyn, they all three played. And then the next game, James Johnson played a bunch. But that, I didn't even think about this somehow. But that was James Johnson's team last year. And Steve Nash was still the coach at the time. Like, I get why him knowing the scheme is valuable. I forgot about that during that moment. But that has all been kind of funky, and they just haven't gotten as much out of that position as I think they would have hoped going into this year. And I think their solutions have worked, right? They've been like, it's not like drastically holding them back, but more versatility, especially from guys who fit the bill of what a modern forward kind of is important to have going forward. But one of the guys that's been filling in and playing up positions on positions is your final observation for our 10 and 10 today.
Yes, I'm going to call him a chameleon because he's been able to blend in. That's Andrew Nembhard. Coming off the bench, he's been able to blend in with TJ McConnell, kind of serve as like the off-ball two, and just spot up and shoot, move around, find openings, get other guys involved when he gets the ball in his hands, sometimes occasionally run the break. But on Monday, he was inserted into the starting lineup. I thought he did a pretty solid job there on CJ McCollum defensively, making it a little challenging for McCollum to shoot over him and get past him. And then in Miami, he was the guy that was defending Hero at the end of the ball game, and it was a little surprising because it's like all season long you've primarily seen Nembhard with the twos, not so much with the ones, and then all of a sudden he has a really good game against Miami, and Carlisle rewards him by throwing him out there. He's like, hey, go stop this guy from getting a bucket here at the end of the game so we can win it. I think Nembhard's been exceptional offensively. I mean, yes, he has improvements to making consistency with the jump shot and figuring out where he needs to pick his spots to shoot and be aggressive. But I think Nembhard has been as advertised as you would expect. He's not a guy that's going to go in there and make it about himself. He's going to get other guys involved. He's going to play some pretty solid defense.
Yeah, he's hitting 38% from deep right now. I don't think that will hold given his college numbers, but I think he'll be average-ish as his career progresses. He has been everything Rick Carlisle likes in a perimeter player, right? He can shoot, he can put the ball on the floor, and he can make a quick decision. So it's not like he's going to make errors. It's not like he's going to bog things down. He's going to keep things moving. And the reason, to your point, is the reason it's been so helpful for this team is he can do it at a ton of positions and with any lineup, right? They've been a lot of binds with the backup four struggling and having no healthy wings these last 3 games really, right? Being able to toss him out there and say, hey, you're the 3, go stand in the middle of the zone and make good passes. And now go defend Tyler Hero. And then on this position, you're the point guard. Now go set up a bit like that lob to Isaiah Jackson was like, he's the point guard in that position. Like all this stuff. is not stuff you expect to be asking of a second round pick. Granted, it was the first pick of the second round, but a second round
Mhm.
pick this quickly in a season. But it doesn't matter who he's with. If he's with the second unit as the two with McConnell, if he's the one in various groups, if he's playing the three, starting at the three, what? Like that has been such an impressive show of skill. But I mean, if you're 6'5" and you can pass, dribble, and shoot, it's like, I guess, yeah, it can work with any group. It's just, it was so unexpected to me the way he's been able to do it and fit in with any group. And it's an added bonus that Tyrese said this. Tyrese said
Mhm.
he's been maybe their best perimeter defender. I don't know if I'd go that far, but he has been good at that and shutting down a
Mhm.
hero. Perhaps the most obvious evidence of that happening this year.
Yeah, and I just go back to Chad Buchanan after the draft and along with everybody else and Rick Carlisle and Kevin Pritchard, they coveted his experience in college. They said he was an intellectually smart basketball player with a high basketball IQ, and you're kind of seeing that play out so far through the first 10 games. And I'm excited to see what Nembhard's role is as his career progresses, because he's one of those guys where you could at the end of the day look at the back of his basketball card and you're like, oh, he played in the league for 10, 12 seasons. Wouldn't surprise me, because he just does a lot of things well, and he's not going to be a guy that evaporates because of what he can bring. He can bring defense. He can be a ball handling guard. A guy like Ish Smith, for example. I mean, it feels like he's been around for like last 5-7 years, and he's not really a predominant scorer. He's just a solid point guard that doesn't turn the ball over. He knows how to get other people involved, and he can be a great teammate and play some sound defense.
Ish Smith, I've seen his name twice today. There's only 5 players from the 2010 draft who suited up in a game this season, and 4 of them were like really good players, and one was Ish Smith. I was like, well, that's
Oh,
random,
wow.
but yeah, he's been
I didn't
around
even know.
for a dozen years, and
I didn't even know that.
yeah, that's not a good draft class. With Nembhard too, the just like to dumb this down to the absolute simplest level possible, but like
Yeah.
if you're a 6'5" point guard, like you just naturally have a big advantage a lot of the time
Mhm.
because you're taller than the other guy. Like Brogdon had that, and he finally figured out his last year at the Pacers. Brogdon did. Like, oh wow, I can just like I'm taller than the guy guarding me at the rim. Like I can finally make this layup. Where he would always try to like scoop it up ahead of him the first couple
Mhm.
of years with this team. Like that sort of thing, just being taller is helpful, and I think that will be
Yeah.
key for him going forward. I think he's kind of showed it a few times already. Do you have a bonus 11th observation? I didn't make you give one, but we made
Ooh.
it through 10, and I don't know if I have any other. I'm curious.
Hmm. Let me think. I like what Chris Duarte's done the last couple of games before he got hurt. Obviously, he had that big night in Brooklyn, but throughout the course of the season, yes, his shot wasn't falling, but he remained confident and he was still shooting when the shots were there. I think the defense is still he still has some work there defensively. You can see there are traits though where he can be a nice lockdown defender. But I think once Duarte's back, fully healthy, and along with Neesmith, I think Carlisle will be put into an advantage to where he can feel comfortable starting either one of them. Or if Neesmith is not having a great night and Duarte is having a somewhat average night or he's having a good night, he can feel comfortable putting Duarte in there at the end of the game over Neesmith because of his ability to defend and knock down shots.
Yeah, if I had to do a bonus one, I agree with all that, by the way. If I had to do a bonus one, mine would have been like Aaron Neesmith dribbling the ball. Like, it's just not something he did that much in Boston, and it's like been a productive thing for him this year, which has been really an added thing for him, and he's fit in very well thrown into the starting five. So with our 2 bonuses, we have now successfully discussed every player except for one on the Pacers roster on the show. Do you know who it is?
Let's see. I'm gonna guess Jalen Smith.
We kind of talked about him, right? The front court
Okay,
pairing with Turner a little bit. The answer is T.J. McConnell. We did not say his name a single time. He
I
is
did.
the he is the king of some. You did a little bit. That is true.
Yeah.
He's the king of somehow just never coming up. Like he's so solid and does the same stuff every game, and it's like, yeah, T.J. McConnell did it again.
Somehow steals an inbound pass every game and no idea how he does it.
If he
Like,
gets that 5-foot little fadeaway back to clicking like it was his first year here, he's going to be hard to
yeah.
keep off the floor. Eddie is everywhere. If you are local to Indianapolis, if you listen to Kevin Bowen talk at all, if you listen to the Pacers on the radio. But Eddie, where can people follow you and all the work you do for the local sports teams and radio stations?
It's easy. Just follow me on Twitter at Eddie Garrison _. Tony's got it beautifully right here on the screen for you. That's pretty much where you can go and find anything. And then I can usually do a couple write-ups after Pacer games. You can find that work on 1075thefan.com. Just click on the Pacers coverage tab, and then you can find some of the recent work that I've did. But yeah, that's pretty much where you can get everything that I do.
Eddie is going to infiltrate Pacerland this year. He's coming back on the show. Well, when it's time. I don't like to repeat guests super close to each other, but if
I
you'll
don't blame you there. I get it. As a producer, I understand that.
yes. So he will be back if he is feeling like coming back. Thank you, Eddie, for the time. It is much appreciated. We will not be doing any, like I said, 20 observations through 20 games or something like that. But lots of fun coming on Locked On Pacers this week. MVPs in town tonight. Raptors, former head coach for the Pacers on their bench, and a really fun team on Saturday. So lots to talk about as this week progresses. We'll cover it all here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Till then, everybody have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.